Yes, we're looking forward to the Big Ten championship game here at the Voice of College Football. Penn State making its first appearance since a 2016 win over Wisconsin. So close, so many times. Breakthrough thanks to Ohio State's loss to Michigan. Oregon, of course, the undisputed number one team in the country, the only undefeated team in the country, enter the Big Ten, make it all the way to Indianapolis in its first season in the Big Ten. Please like the video and subscribe right here at the Voice of College Football. 7 common opponents for Oregon and Penn State. No, they did not play during the regular season, but we've got 7 like matchups to size up the Ducks and the Lions. It certainly looked like a Pac-12 matchup at the Rose Bowl when the Ducks took on UCLA and won 34-13 with 16 more first downs. Dillon Gabriel, 31 of 41 on the day, 3 touchdowns. Jordan James eclipsed 100 yards with 103 as Oregon dominated the football game, outgaining UCLA by 259 yards, over 2 yards per carry, over 1.5 yards per pass. Third and fourth down, the Ducks were efficient at 9 for 15 and held the Bruins to 2 out of 12 as Oregon won by 3 touchdowns. UCLA went to Penn State and lost the game 27-11. The Nittany Lions' 1 touchdown given up on defense was with 1 second left in the game. Otherwise, it was 27-3 before the Bruins tacked on the TD and the 2-point conversion. Penn State in control of this one, although Penn State only had 85 rushing yards as the Bruins outrushed Penn State. Also with Penn State eclipsing the Bruins' 70 passing yards. But keep in mind, there was no Ethan Garbers in this game for UCLA as Justin Martin got his first start for UCLA and acquitted himself rather well, 22 of 30 with a touchdown pass and no picks. But Penn State, of course, won it comfortably, converting 7 of 12 on third down and holding UCLA to 8 of 19. Just about everybody had an easy time with Purdue this season as the Boilermakers could only win 1 game, and that was against an FCS team. Oregon won at West Lafayette 35-0. Surprising here, though, Purdue did not score, but they racked up 208 rushing yards. Oregon threw it for plus 197 against Purdue. But again, Purdue, it's just funny to see a team lose 35-0 and outgain the other team, and especially at 1.5 yards per carry. But Oregon, lethal through the air, converted 6 of 10 third and fourth downs. And again, Ducks 35, Purdue nothing. Similar score in Happy Valley when Penn State later in the season took on Boiler Up. 49-10 final there. Penn State outrushed Purdue by 149 yards, just about 4 yards more per carry. And so that's ranking offensive efficiency versus defensive efficiency. And then yards per pass, Penn State plus 4.3 and converting 10 of 15 on third and fourth down. Penn State 49-10. Maryland went to Oregon. Of course, the Terps only won 1 Big Ten game after 3 successful bowl-winning seasons under Mike Locksley and lost 39-18. Actually, Maryland was within 14-10 late in the second quarter on a day in which Dillon Gabriel threw 3 touchdowns with no interceptions. The first down total was even 19 apiece. Oregon outrushed the Terps by 97 yards, but Maryland 23 yards better through the air, at least in total yardage, because, of course, they had to throw the full football in the fourth quarter. Yards per pass, Oregon, the better team, as well as yards per carry by 3.1 yards per attempt. And again, held Maryland to just 7 of 21 conversions on third and fourth down. And the big difference in this game to make it a blowout in the end was Oregon winning the turnover margin 3-0. Just this past weekend, Penn State blew out Maryland 44-7, even though the Nittany Lions fumbled on the first play of the game, and Maryland scored a touchdown on its first offensive play of the game, and then it was all Penn State from there. And Penn State scored a late touchdown in which Michael Locksley took great exception to, and James Franklin met that question in the postgame with the fact that Penn State brought in its third and fourth lines on the depth chart to play football on the last couple drives of the game. And again, 44-7 Penn State as they completely dominated on the ground by 147 yards and 2.2 yards per carry, converting 9 of 20 on third and fourth downs and holding Maryland And of course, this is a football stat that comes home to roost almost each and every time. Third and fourth down conversions, Maryland just 2 of 14 and getting blown out by 37. Both Oregon and Penn State faced Washington. Of course, this is one of the great rivalries in college football and the Big Ten's designated rivalry, as of course Washington would play Washington State in the Apple Cup. And for Oregon, it was the Civil War against Oregon State, but the Big Ten has smartly and pretty obviously matched up Washington and Oregon as the final rivalry game on that weekend, and the Ducks were way too much in this one, 49-21, outgaining the Huskies by 183 yards on the ground. Washington had 37 carries for 43 yards. Now, Oregon also had 10 sacks and 16 tackles for loss, which is a ridiculous number, and outgained Washington by 5.4 yards per carry. The third and fourth down rates were also indicative of the final scores. The Ducks rolled by 28. Similar outcome in Happy Valley as Washington visited Penn State the week after the Nittany Lions lost to Ohio State, and Penn State rolled 35-6. And Drew Aller hit on 20 of 28 passes for a touchdown and no picks, and Washington a difficult time running the football against Penn State, being outgained on the ground 266-74, 74 yards on 33 carries as Penn State's defense racked up 5 sacks and 9 tackles for loss, and Penn State won by 29. Illinois turned out to be a pretty damn good football team at 9-3, 6-3 in the Big Ten, but they could not get past Oregon or Penn State. Think of all the teams in the Big Ten that did not have to face the two best teams in the Big Ten. Illinois did, and they still finished again with 9 wins this season. They lost against the Ducks at Autzen Stadium 38-9. The Ducks completely outclassed them with 97-plus yards rushing, 137 through the air. In terms of that advantage, 6 yards per pass better than Illinois in converting 7 of 13 third and fourth downs, and the Ducks won it by 29. Penn State had a tougher time with Illinois. This game was a 21-7 final. Penn State led with 4 minutes left to play, only 14-7. But they did control the football game on the ground. 239 yards for Penn State, rushing to 34 for Illinois. The Illini did pass the ball more and somewhat more effectively. 1 yard per pass play better, and then also 50 total yards through the air better. But Penn State won it with a turnover margin of +2, 21-7. Despite Wisconsin's disappointing season with 5 consecutive losses, 5-7, one of those was a monumental effort at home in which they almost upset number 1 Oregon, final 16-13. So the Ducks had Jordan James run for 121 yards, and they held Wisconsin quarterback Braden Locke to 12 of 28 for 96 yards in outgaining Wisconsin through the air by 122 yards, but it was only a 6-yard advantage on the ground as the Ducks were outgained per carry, but they converted 6 of 17 third downs. Not a great effort, but much better than the Wisconsin offensive conversion rate at 2 for 14. They each turned the ball over once as Oregon escaped Camp Randall Stadium 16-13. Penn State had somewhat of a similar affair at Wisconsin. They led this game just 14-13 in the fourth quarter before Jalen Reed had a pick 6 to break it open. Penn State won by 15, outgaining the Badgers by 92 yards on the ground, 29 through the air at just about 2 yards per carry and 2.7 yards per pass, and a better conversion rate, 8 for 15 on third and fourth downs versus 9 of 21 for the Badgers, as Penn State won it going away 28-13, but it took a while to get there. All right, here's the big game of comparison, of course. Ohio State, many believe to be the best team in the conference, the best team in the country at one point. Obviously, they finished 4th in the Big Ten if you look at the standings, but they took Oregon to the wire. Toughest game of the season for the Ducks, of course, as Ohio State moved into field goal range at the end, but Will Howard ran with the football, and time ran out on the Buckeyes in field goal range as they lost 32-31 to the Ducks. The statistics were almost what you would expect out of a 32-31 game, almost even. Oregon did outgain Ohio State by 27 total yards, and they were about even in terms of third and fourth down conversions. And the Ducks got one more turnover on their side, and that could have proven decisive in defeating Ohio State 32-31. All right, so here's the difference. Penn State at home loses to Ohio State 20-13, had two shots near the goal line in the fourth quarter to tie the game, but Ohio State's goal line defense turned Penn State away both times. Also, though, Penn State had the advantage of a pick six, also an Ohio State fumble by Will Howard at the pylon at the goal line going in for another touchdown. So you can look at this a number of ways. Penn State certainly had its opportunities to win the game, although statistically controlled to a certain extent by Ohio State by 88 yards in this game. 4 of 13 for Penn State against Ohio State's defense, as the Buckeyes converted 7 of 14. Penn State was +1 on the turnover margin as they fell to the Buckeyes 20-13. Add it all up, 7 common opponents. That's rare to find these days. Ducks won all 7, Penn State 6-1. You may be surprised, like I was, to see that Penn State actually, despite that one loss, had a better point margin than Oregon, slightly, 143-138. The first downs almost equal as well. This is where the difference is in the offensive approaches. Penn State outgained these 7 opponents by over 100 yards per game, 721 total. Oregon still outrushed their opponents significantly, but more by about 60 yards per game at +424. Flip that around for the passing game. Penn State outpassed the opponents by 277. That's what? About 35 yards per game. And for Oregon, almost 100 yards per game at 636. The yards per carry lean Penn State's way, but this isn't, again, it's not just yards per carry on offense. It's the yards per carry differential, offense versus defense. And then, of course, Oregon more explosive through the air, averaging over 18 yards per reception. And this is a cumulative statistic. This is not an average per opponent. This is the combined total of the yards per play difference and the yards per pass difference in particular. Third and fourth down, about even here, although Penn State was slightly more effective at 54%. The third and fourth down defense, both teams roughly the same, although Oregon more effective, giving up just 31 first down conversions out of 106 third and fourth down attempts. The turnover margin is similar. Oregon +7, Penn State +5. Oregon-Penn State from Indianapolis as they meet for the first time since the 1995 Rose Bowl. Remember that one? Penn State completed an undefeated season. Oregon finished at 8-4 under Mike Bellotti. Leave your score predictions down below. We'll continue to highlight this game. Check out the conversation we had with Marty Leap of Rivals, Penn State Rivals. And then also we had a conversation with Ryan Winter from Sports Chat 503 on our Big Ten Live show on Monday night. We've got a record coming up with Spencer McLaughlin from Locked On Ducks. So that is something to look forward to as well. We're all over the Big Ten championship game, all over all the conference championship games, and of course watch our Tuesday watch party, the unveiling and the conversation about the college football playoff rankings. Although, of course, Oregon, Penn State safely in, but now it's all about that number 1 or 2 seed. The Ducks would wrap up the number 1 seed, we would think. For Penn State, it could be a 1 seed, but probably that goes to Texas if they win the SEC, and Penn State would still get a number 2 seed with a win in Indianapolis in their first Big Ten championship since 2016. Again, comments below. Leave us your score predictions right here at the Voice of College Football.